I came home from my shift at the textile factory in Raleigh, North Carolina, to find a construction crew building a pavilion in the middle of my wooded lot. Not near my house, not on some cleared area I had forgotten about, but deep in the woods where I had specifically purchased the land to keep it natural and untouched. My jaw dropped as I slammed my truck door and marched toward the noise of power tools and shouting workers. "Hey! What the hell are you doing on my property?" I yelled over the sound of a circular saw cutting through lumber. The construction crew looked at me with confusion, and one of them, a middle-aged guy with a clipboard, walked over with a concerned expression. "You live here?" he asked, pointing at my house about 100 yards away through the trees. "Yeah, I am Ryan Quentin, and this is my land, all of it, including where you are standing right now." The foreman's face went pale as he flipped through papers on his clipboard. "We have a work order from the Meadowbrook Hills HOA. They said this was community property designated for a neighborhood gathering space." I felt my blood pressure rising. "This is not community property. I own 5 acres here, and you are about 2 acres deep into my private land." "Who authorized this?" Before the foreman could answer, I heard the clicking of heels on the wooden planks they had already laid down. A woman in her late 40s with blonde highlights and a pink polo shirt emblazoned with the HOA logo approached us with her phone held up like she was recording. "Is there a problem here?" she asked in that particular tone that told me everything I needed to know about what I was dealing with. "You are damn right there is a problem," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You are building on my property without permission. That is called trespassing and property damage." The woman, whose name tag read Patricia Hendricks, HOA president, gave me a condescending smile that made my skin crawl. "Mr. Quentin, I presume? We sent multiple notices to your address about the community improvement project. As per the HOA bylaws, Section 14.3, the association has the right to develop underutilized community spaces for the benefit of all residents. This is not a community space. This is my private property. I have the deed in my house. Do you want me to get it?" Patricia waved her hand dismissively. "The HOA conducted a survey last year and determined that this wooded area was part of the common grounds. You may have been confused about your property lines." I pulled out my phone and opened the photo I always kept of my survey map. "Look, right here. My property line extends 200 feet past where you are standing. You are not even close to being on HOA land." The foreman stepped back, clearly wanting no part of this conflict. Patricia, however, doubled down. "Sir, I am going to have to ask you to leave this work site. If you have concerns about property boundaries, you can file a formal complaint with the HOA board, and we will review it at our next monthly meeting. Your next meeting is in 3 weeks. You are not building anything else until we sort this out right now. Pack up and get off my land." Patricia's face turned red. "If you interfere with this community improvement project, I will have no choice but to fine you for obstruction and file a restraining order. This pavilion has been approved by the board, and we have every right to complete it." I looked at the foreman. "Do you have a permit from the county?" He shuffled through his papers again. The HOA said they would handle all the permitting." "So, no permit. Got it." I turned back to Patricia. "You are building an unpermitted structure on private property. I am calling the sheriff." Patricia laughed. "Go ahead. Sheriff Morrison is very familiar with our community, and he knows we run a tight ship here. He will tell you the same thing I am telling you." I dialed 911 anyway and explained the situation. The dispatcher said she would send a deputy out to assess the situation. Patricia stood there with her arms crossed, looking smug, while the construction crew awkwardly stood around, not knowing whether to keep working or pack up. 20 minutes later, Deputy Harris arrived in his patrol car. He was a younger guy, probably in his early 30s, and he listened carefully as both Patricia and I explained our sides. I showed him my property survey on my phone, and Patricia showed him a map that the HOA had apparently created themselves, which showed my wooded area as community land. Deputy Harris scratched his head. "This is a civil matter regarding property boundaries. I cannot force anyone to leave without a court order establishing who owns what. Mr. Quentin, do you have the actual deed and survey documents in my house? Give me 5 minutes." I jogged back to my house and grabbed the folder I kept with all my property documents. When I bought this place 3 years ago, I had made sure to get a full survey done because I specifically wanted the wooded lot. It was the whole reason I had purchased this property. I had grown up in the mountains of Virginia, and having my own piece of forest was a dream come true, even if it was just 5 acres. When I returned, Deputy Harris examined my documents carefully. He then looked at Patricia's map and frowned. "Madam, this map you have shows different property lines than the official county survey. Do you have a certified survey that contradicts Mr. Quentin's documents?" Patricia's confident expression faltered slightly. "The HOA hired a surveyor last year who confirmed these boundaries." "I need to see that official survey with the surveyor's stamp and license number. What Mr. Quentin has here is a certified survey from Randolph County. If you have conflicting documentation, I need to see it." "It is back at the HOA office," Patricia said quickly. Deputy Harris nodded. "Okay, here is what is going to happen. The construction stops right now until this property dispute is resolved. Mr. Quentin has presented certified documents showing this is his land. If you have contradicting certified documents, you need to produce them. If you cannot, then this is trespassing and you need to remove your construction materials." Patricia's face went from red to purple. "This is ridiculous. We have put thousands of dollars into this project already. The entire community voted on this pavilion." "That is not my problem, madam. You need to make sure you are building on land you actually own or have rights to. Mr. Quentin, I recommend you also file a formal complaint with the county about this. You might want to contact a property attorney as well." "I will do that first thing tomorrow," I said. After Deputy Harris left, Patricia glared at me with pure hatred. "You are going to regret this. The HOA has lawyers and we will tie you up in court for years if we have to. And in the meantime, you are going to be fined for every single violation we can find on your property. Your grass is a 1/4 inch too long. That is a $50 fine. Your mailbox is the wrong shade of black. Another $50. Your truck is parked on the street overnight. Another $100. You do what you have to do," I said, "but get your construction crew off my land right now." The foreman, looking relieved to have an excuse to leave, started directing his crew to pack up their tools. Patricia stormed off toward her car, already on her phone, probably calling her lawyer. That night, I could not sleep. I kept thinking about the massive pile of lumber and the half-built pavilion floor sitting in my woods. They had cut down 6 trees already to make room for the structure. 6 beautiful oak trees that had probably been growing for 40 years. I walked out there with a flashlight and just stared at the stumps, feeling sick to my stomach. The next morning, I called a property attorney named James Mitchell whose office was in downtown Raleigh. His secretary scheduled me for an emergency consultation that afternoon. I took a half-day off work and drove the 45 minutes to his office with all my documents. James was in his early 60s, with gray hair and a no-nonsense attitude that I appreciated immediately. He looked over my survey, my deed, and the photos I had taken of the construction site. "This is pretty cut and dried," he said. You own the land, you have the documentation, and they built on it without permission. That is trespassing, destruction of property, and possibly criminal mischief, depending on how the DA wants to handle it. What should I do? File a police report for the destroyed trees. Each mature tree has a value, and in North Carolina, you can sue for treble damages for unauthorized tree removal. Those 6 oaks could be worth several $1,000s each. Then we file an injunction to force them to remove everything they built and restore the land to its original condition. We will also file a civil suit for damages. How long will this take? If they fight it, could be 6 months to a year. If they are smart and realize they messed up, maybe a few weeks. Depends on how stubborn this HOA president is. Based on my interaction with Patricia, I knew the answer to that. She is going to fight it. Then we gear up for a fight. I will need a $5,000 retainer to start. I winced. I did not have that kind of money just sitting around, but I was not going to let the HOA steal my land. I put it on my credit card and signed the paperwork. Over the next week, things escalated quickly. I came home every day to find new violation notices stuck to my door. Patricia was not kidding about hitting me with every fine imaginable. My grass was too long, then too short. My car was parked wrong. My garbage cans were visible from the street. My house numbers were not reflective enough. Each violation came with a $50 to $100 fine. I documented every single notice and forwarded them to James, who assured me that this was retaliation and would actually help our case. The HOA was supposed to give warnings before fines, and they had to follow their own bylaws about the violation process. Patricia was so angry that she was skipping all of that. 2 weeks after the initial confrontation, I received a letter from the HOA's lawyer demanding that I allow them to complete the pavilion or face a lawsuit for interfering with community improvements. James fired back with our own letter outlining the trespassing and property damage, along with a demand for $15,000 to cover the value of the trees and restoration of the land. Patricia's response was to call an emergency HOA meeting where she tried to get the community to vote to use their right of eminent domain to seize my wooded lot. Apparently, several neighbors tipped me off about this meeting, and I showed up with James. The meeting was held at the community clubhouse, a small building near the neighborhood entrance. About 30 residents showed up, which was apparently a big turnout. Patricia stood at the front with her board members. A man named Gregory Summers, who was the treasurer, a woman named Susan Walsh, who was the secretary, and another woman named Brenda Carter, who was the vice president. Patricia started by presenting her side of the story, making it sound like I was an unreasonable neighbor trying to block a community improvement that everyone wanted. She showed pictures of the planned pavilion, which looked nice, I had to admit, with benches and a roof and a barbecue area. This pavilion will add value to all of our homes, Patricia said. It will give us a place to gather for neighborhood events, birthday parties, and holiday celebrations. One selfish homeowner should not be able to block what is good for the entire community. Then it was my turn. James stood up and presented the facts calmly and clearly. He showed the survey, the deed, and explained that the HOA had built on private property without permission or permits. The issue here is not whether a pavilion is a good idea, James said. The issue is that the HOA built it on land they do not own and have no right to use. Mr. Quentin purchased his property specifically for the wooded lot. He has every right to keep his land as he sees fit, and the HOA cannot simply take it because they want to. Several neighbors started asking questions. One man, who introduced himself as Robert Chen, asked Patricia directly, "Did you verify the property lines before starting construction?" Patricia hesitated. We relied on our community map, which has been in use for years. But did you get an actual survey? Robert pressed. We had a surveyor look at it last year, Patricia said vaguely. James jumped in. Can you produce that survey report with the official seal and license number? Patricia shuffled her papers. I do not have it with me right now. Another neighbor, a woman named Karen Dunn, raised her hand. I almost laughed at the name. I have to be honest, Patricia. If Ryan owns that land, we cannot just take it. That is not right. Several other neighbors nodded in agreement. Patricia's face got red again. We have already invested over $8,000 in this project. That is money from all of our HOA dues. If we have to scrap it, that is money wasted. Maybe you should have made sure you were building on HOA land first, someone called out from the back. The meeting devolved into arguments, with about half the neighbors supporting Patricia and half questioning her judgment. The vote on eminent domain failed when James pointed out that an HOA does not actually have the right to use eminent domain anyway. Only government entities can do that. Patricia adjourned the meeting angrily, and several neighbors came up to me afterward to apologize. We had no idea she was building on your land, Robert Chen said. If we had known, we never would have voted to approve the Pavilion project. I appreciate that, I said. I have nothing against a pavilion. I just do not want it on my property. Over the next month, the legal battle continued. The HOA refused to remove the construction materials, and Patricia sent more violation notices. I countered every fine through the proper appeals process, which James helped me with. The HOA's lawyer tried to argue that I had abandoned my property rights by not developing the wooded lot, which was laughable. The breaking point came when I went out to check on my woods after a storm and found that someone had continued construction on the pavilion. The roof was partially completed, and there were fresh tire tracks from a vehicle. I immediately called the sheriff's office and filed a criminal trespassing report. This time, a different deputy came out, Deputy Ramirez. She took photos, wrote up a report, and told me that the DA's office would review it for possible charges. I also called James, who filed an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order to stop any further construction. The judge granted it within 48 hours. The order explicitly forbade the HOA, its agents, contractors, or representatives from entering my property for any reason. Violation of the order could result in contempt of court charges. I had the order printed and laminated, then posted copies on trees around the construction site. I also installed trail cameras to catch anyone who tried to violate the order. Sure enough, 3 days later, my cameras caught Patricia herself walking onto my property to inspect the pavilion. I downloaded the footage and sent it straight to James and Deputy Ramirez. James filed a contempt motion immediately. Patricia was required to appear before Judge Anderson at the Randolph County Courthouse. I took the day off work to be there. Patricia showed up with her lawyer, a slick-looking guy in an expensive suit named Todd Brennan. They tried to argue that Patricia was just inspecting the structure to assess damages and did not mean any harm. Judge Anderson was not having it. He was an older man with white hair and a stern demeanor that reminded me of my grandfather. "Miss Hendricks, did you read the restraining order?" "Yes, Your Honor, but I did not think it meant I could not just look at the pavilion. I did not do any construction. The order says you cannot enter the property for any reason. Any reason. That is not ambiguous. That is crystal clear. I am finding you in contempt of court and fining you $500. If there is another violation, I will consider jail time." Patricia's face went white. Her lawyer whispered something to her, and she nodded. "Your Honor, the HOA would like to request a full hearing on the property line dispute. We believe there is merit to our claim that this land was designated as common area. Judge Anderson looked at James. Does your client have the deed and survey? Yes, Your Honor. Certified by Randolph County, dated 3 years ago when Mr. Quentin purchased the property. And does the HOA have any certified documentation to contradict that? Todd Brennan shuffled through his papers. We are working on obtaining our survey from last year, Your Honor. You are working on it. This case has been going on for 2 months. Why do you not have it all ready? There have been some difficulties in locating the surveyor's full report. Judge Anderson did not look impressed. You have 2 weeks to produce a certified survey that contradicts Mr. Quentin's documentation. If you cannot do that, I am ruling in Mr. Quentin's favor and ordering you to remove all structures and materials from his property and restore it to its original condition. Is that clear? Yes, Your Honor, Todd said. 2 weeks later, we were back in court. The HOA still did not have a certified survey. Todd tried to present a hand-drawn map and some photos, but Judge Anderson shut him down immediately. This is not a certified survey. This is a sketch. Do you have a licensed surveyor's report or not? Todd hesitated. Your Honor, we have been unable to locate the surveyor who allegedly did the work last year. We believe Miss Hendricks may have been mistaken about having a survey done. Patricia looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Judge Anderson shook his head. So, to be clear, the HOA never actually had the property surveyed before building on what they claimed was common land. It appears that way, Your Honor. This is one of the most reckless cases of property mismanagement I have seen in my 20 years on the bench. I am ruling in favor of Mr. Quentin. The HOA is ordered to remove all structures, materials, and equipment from his property within 30 days. They are also ordered to restore the land as closely as possible to its original condition, including removing stumps and replanting trees of similar species and size to those that were destroyed. Furthermore, the HOA is liable for all damages, including Mr. Quentin's legal fees. We will have a separate hearing on the amount of damages in 60 days. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. James shook my hand and whispered, "We got them." But Patricia was not done yet. As we left the courthouse, she confronted me in the parking lot. "You have destroyed this community," she hissed. "You know how much this is going to cost. The HOA does not have the money to remove everything and replant trees. We are going to have to levy a special assessment on every homeowner. They are all going to hate you." "Maybe they should hate you for building on property you did not own," I said. "I am not finished with you," Patricia said. "I will find a way to make your life miserable as long as you live in this neighborhood." "That sounds like harassment and a violation of the restraining order," James said calmly. "I suggest you walk away before you dig yourself into a deeper hole." Patricia stormed off to her car and peeled out of the parking lot. The next 30 days were tense. The HOA hired a company to remove the pavilion structure, and I watched with satisfaction as they dismantled everything. However, they did the bare minimum required. They removed the building materials but left all the stumps and did not do anything to actually restore the land. When the 30 days were up, and the property was still covered in stumps and tire ruts, James filed a motion for the HOA to be held in contempt for not following the judge's order about restoration. The judge agreed and gave them another 30 days with an additional penalty. But the HOA claimed they did not have the funds to do a proper restoration. They had spent all their reserves on the failed pavilion project, and the homeowners were in revolt over a proposed special assessment to cover the costs. That is when I got a different idea. A petty, satisfying, perfectly legal idea. I started researching the value of timber in North Carolina. It turned out that mature oak trees were worth quite a bit to logging companies. The trees on my property were exactly the kind that Mills wanted. I got quotes from 3 different timber companies and settled on one called Carolina Timber Services. The owner, a guy named Marcus Webb, came out to assess my property. "You have got some beautiful oaks here," he said. "I can give you about $20,000 for the harvestable timber, and we will clear out all the stumps too as part of the service." "How long will it take?" 3 days, maybe 4. "We bring in the equipment, take down the trees, haul them out, grind the stumps. When we are done, you will have a cleared lot." "Perfect. Let's do it." I made sure to get all the proper permits from the county for timber harvesting. Everything was legal and above board. The logging was scheduled for a Thursday through Sunday. On Wednesday evening, I posted a notice on the community Facebook page. "Attention, Meadowbrook Hills residents. I will be conducting permitted timber harvesting on my property starting tomorrow. There will be noise from chainsaws and heavy equipment. I apologize for any inconvenience." The post immediately blew up with comments. Most people were confused about what I was doing. A few people who understood the situation started laughing. And Patricia, of course, lost her mind. She called me directly, which was a mistake. "You cannot cut down those trees. That is where the pavilion is supposed to be." "There is no pavilion, Patricia. The judge ordered you to remove it, remember? And these are my trees on my property. I can do whatever I want with them. But those trees are part of the natural beauty of the neighborhood. You should have thought about that before you cut down 6 of them for your illegal pavilion." "Oh wait, you did not care about the natural beauty then, did you? If you cut down those trees, you are going to destroy the wooded area that everyone enjoys looking at." Correction. The wooded area on my private property that I paid for and own, not community property. Mine. Patricia sputtered for a moment. "I will get another injunction. You cannot do this." "Good luck with that. I have all the permits and the judge already ruled that this is my property. You have no standing to stop me from harvesting my own timber." I hung up and blocked her number. Thursday morning, the logging trucks arrived at 7 in the morning. The crew had 3 guys with chainsaws, a guy operating a massive claw machine to grab logs, and another guy driving a truck to haul everything away. I stood in my driveway with a cup of coffee and watched them work. Patricia showed up within 20 minutes, still in her bathrobe, screaming about how I could not do this. The crew boss, Marcus, calmly showed her the permits and told her to leave the work site for safety reasons. She refused and stood in front of one of the trucks. I called the sheriff's office for the 3rd time in as many months. Deputy Harris showed up and, recognizing both me and Patricia from the previous incidents, immediately understood the situation. "Madam, do you have any legal right to stop this logging operation?" he asked Patricia. "He is destroying community property. The court already ruled this is his property." "Does he have the proper permits?" Marcus handed over the paperwork. Deputy Harris looked it over and nodded. "Everything is in order." "Madam, you need to leave, or I will have to cite you for interfering with a legal work operation. This is outrageous. Someone needs to stop this." "That someone is not you and it is not me. Please leave the area." Patricia finally left, but not before taking dozens of photos and videos on her phone, probably planning to post them all over social media to make me look like the villain. The logging operation was beautiful in its efficiency. The crew took down tree after tree with precision, cutting them into manageable sections and loading them onto trucks. By the end of the first day, half of my wooded lot was cleared. The sound of chainsaws was music to my ears. Neighbors came by to watch, and reactions were mixed. Some people were horrified at the destruction of the trees. Others, particularly those who knew the full story, were laughing their heads off. Robert Chen came over with a beer and we sat in lawn chairs watching the work. "This is the most epic HOA revenge I have ever seen," he said. "Patricia is having a complete meltdown. She has been posting in the Facebook group every hour about how you are destroying the neighborhood. She should have thought about that before building on my land. Oh, everyone knows that now. About half the neighborhood is on your side. The other half thinks you are both crazy. Either way, it is entertaining." By Sunday afternoon, the job was done. My 5-acre property now had about 2 acres of cleared land where the woods used to be. The stumps were ground down to below ground level, and the whole area was relatively flat and ready for whatever I wanted to do with it. The kicker was that Carolina Timber Services paid me $23,000 for the timber, which more than covered my legal fees and gave me a nice profit besides. I took photos of the cleared lot and sent them to James with a note. "Problem solved." James called me laughing. "You are absolutely insane, but I love it. This is the best outcome. You got paid. The HOA does not have to restore your land because there is nothing to restore anymore. And Patricia has to live with the fact that her illegal pavilion project resulted in the total destruction of the wooded area she supposedly cared about." Exactly. "And now I am thinking about what to do with the cleared land." "What are you thinking?" "Maybe a nice big garage for my truck, or a workshop. Or maybe I will just leave it as an open field and plant wildflowers. The point is, it is my land and I get to decide." The damages hearing was scheduled for 2 months later. James presented all of our costs, legal fees, the value of the original 6 trees that were destroyed, emotional distress, and the cost of my time dealing with all of this. He asked for $50,000 in total damages. The HOA's lawyer tried to argue that I had mitigated my damages by selling the timber, so I should not get the full value of the destroyed trees. Judge Anderson disagreed. Mr. Quentin was forced to take action to resolve a situation created entirely by the HOA's negligence and illegal activity. The fact that he found a way to get paid for his timber does not absolve the HOA of their responsibility for the original 6 trees they destroyed. I am awarding Mr. Quentin $35,000 in damages, which includes the value of the destroyed trees at $3,000 each, his legal fees, and compensation for his time and stress. The HOA is responsible for paying this within 90 days. Patricia looked like she was going to be sick. The HOA did not have $35,000. They were going to have to levy a huge special assessment on all the homeowners, which was going to make her extremely unpopular. As we left the courthouse, Todd Brennan pulled James aside. "My client would like to discuss a payment plan. Your client has 90 days per the judge's order. If they do not pay, we will put a lien on the HOA's assets, including the clubhouse. Please be reasonable. The HOA does not have this kind of money liquid. They will have to collect it from homeowners, and that takes time." James looked at me. I thought about it for a moment. These were my neighbors, after all. Most of them had not done anything wrong. It was Patricia who had caused this whole mess. "Here is what I will do," I said. "I will accept payment over 12 months, no interest, if Patricia Hendricks resigns as HOA president immediately and agrees never to hold a board position again. I want it in writing, signed and notarized." Todd's eyes widened. "I will have to discuss that with my client." "You have 24 hours. Otherwise, I want the full amount in 90 days. Patricia was forced to agree. She resigned the next day at an emergency board meeting, and Robert Chen was elected as the new president. The HOA paid me $3,000 a month for the next year, and Patricia moved out of the neighborhood 6 months later. I heard she bought a condo somewhere in Virginia where there was no HOA. The neighborhood slowly recovered from the drama. The new board was much more reasonable and actually followed proper procedures for everything. They never bothered me about my cleared land, which I eventually turned into a wildflower meadow that attracted bees and butterflies. Several neighbors told me they actually preferred it to the dense woods. I framed the last check from the HOA and hung it in my garage next to the photos of the logging operation. It reminded me that standing up for your rights, even when it seems like too much trouble, is always worth it. About a year after everything was settled, Deputy Harris stopped by my house. I thought maybe there was another problem, but he was smiling. "I just wanted to follow up on your case," he said. "The DA's office reviewed all the evidence, including Patricia's violation of the restraining order and the continued construction after you reported it. They decided to file criminal trespassing charges against her." "Really? When did this happen?" "About 3 months ago. She pled guilty to misdemeanor trespassing and paid a $500 fine plus court costs. I thought you would want to know." "That is good to hear. Thanks for following up." "No problem. And just between us, that logging operation was legendary. Every deputy in the department heard about it. We were all rooting for you." After he left, I sat on my back porch looking out at my wildflower meadow. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. Bees buzzed lazily from flower to flower, and I could hear birds singing in the remaining trees along my property line. I thought about everything that had happened over the past year and a half. The anger, the stress, the legal battles, the money. It had all been worth it to defend what was mine and to teach Patricia and the HOA board that they could not just steamroll over people's rights. My phone buzzed with a text from Robert Chen. "HOA meeting tonight if you want to come. We are voting on new landscaping for the actual common areas. Nothing controversial, I promise." I texted back. "I will pass, but thanks for the invite." I did not need to go to HOA meetings anymore. My battles with the association were over. I had my land, my meadow, my peace and quiet. That was all I had ever wanted in the first place. The next morning, I was drinking coffee on my porch when I saw a for sale sign go up at Patricia's old house. A young couple with a toddler came by later that day to look at it. They waved to me from the driveway, and I waved back. New neighbors, new start. Robert stopped by that evening with some documents. "I wanted to give you these personally," he said, handing me a folder. "The board voted unanimously to formally apologize to you for everything that happened with Patricia. We also updated our bylaws to require verified surveys before any construction project, and we are renaming the community fund that Patricia mismanaged. It is now called the Responsible Oversight Fund." I laughed. "That is diplomatic. We are trying." A lot of residents felt terrible about what happened to you. Patricia convinced everyone that she knew what she was doing and we all just went along with it. We should have asked more questions. I appreciate the apology, really, and I am glad you are president now. You actually seem to care about doing things the right way. I am trying my best. Oh, and one more thing. We are planning a neighborhood barbecue next month. It will be at the clubhouse on actual HOA property this time. I hope you will come. "I will think about it," I said, though I already knew I probably would not go. I was not much for socializing, and I suspected a lot of people still saw me as the guy who cut down all the trees, even if I had been in the right. But life moved on. I went to work at the textile factory, came home, and enjoyed my property. I started a vegetable garden in part of the cleared area and built a small shed for my tools. The wildflower meadow grew thick and beautiful, and I spent summer evenings sitting out there reading books and watching the sunset. One Saturday, about 2 years after the whole Pavilion incident, I was at the hardware store in Raleigh buying supplies for a new project when I ran into someone I had not seen in months. It was Susan Walsh, the former HOA secretary who had been on the board with Patricia. "Ryan," she said, looking uncomfortable. "How have you been?" "Good. You?" "Okay, I wanted to apologize to you. I should have questioned Patricia more about the property lines before we approved that pavilion. I just assumed she had done her due diligence." "It is in the past," I said. "I know, but I still feel bad about it. We put you through hell for something that was our mistake, or really, Patricia's mistake. She was so confident that she was right about everything. She railroaded the whole board. Did you know she did not actually have a survey done?" Susan shook her head. "Not until it came out in court. She told us she had verified everything. When I found out she lied, I resigned from the board. I could not be part of that anymore." "I do not blame you for Patricia's actions," I said. "She made her choices. Still, I am sorry. And I am glad you won your case. That pavilion idea was nice in theory, but not on someone else's land." We chatted for a few more minutes before going our separate ways. It was good to clear the air, even with someone who had been only peripherally involved. As I drove home with my truck bed full of lumber, I thought about how the whole situation could have been avoided if Patricia had just taken the time to verify the property lines before starting construction. One simple survey, one conversation with me, and none of it would have happened. But her arrogance and certainty that she was always right had cost the HOA tens of thousands of dollars and destroyed her reputation. When I got home, there was a letter in my mailbox from a law firm I did not recognize. My stomach dropped, worried that somehow the legal battle was starting up again. But when I opened it, I found something completely different. It was a letter informing me that Patricia Hendricks had filed for bankruptcy. As part of the bankruptcy proceedings, she was discharging debts including the $500 contempt fine and the court costs from her criminal trespassing conviction. The letter stated that I might be listed as a creditor, but since the HOA had already paid my civil judgment, I was not affected. I set the letter aside and felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of me felt vindicated that Patricia's actions had caught up with her so completely. Another part of me felt a little sorry for her, despite everything. She had destroyed her own life over a stupid pavilion, but mostly, I felt grateful that I had stood my ground. If I had let the HOA bully me into accepting the pavilion on my land, I would have lost 2 acres of my property essentially forever. They would have claimed adverse possession after enough time passed. Standing up to them, as exhausting as it had been, was the right choice. I spent the rest of the afternoon working on my new project, building raised garden beds for vegetables. The soil in the cleared area was perfect now that the stumps were gone and I had tilled it. I was planning to grow tomatoes, peppers, squash, and beans. Maybe some herbs too. As I worked, I could hear kids playing in a nearby yard. The neighborhood had gotten quieter after Patricia left. No more constant violation notices for trivial things. No more angry posts in the Facebook group about people not following arbitrary rules. Robert and the new board ran things sensibly, focusing on actual maintenance issues rather than petty enforcement. My phone rang. It was James Mitchell, my attorney. We had kept in touch occasionally after the case was settled. "Ryan, I wanted to give you a heads up about something," he said. "I just got word that Todd Brennan dropped the HOA as a client. Apparently, they could not pay his bills after your case." "Really?" "Yeah. He was pretty bitter about the whole thing. He blamed Patricia for lying to him about having a survey. Apparently, he would have advised them to settle immediately if he had known the truth from the start. Sounds like Patricia burned a lot of bridges." That is an understatement. Anyway, I wanted to make sure you knew in case they try anything else. The new board seems reasonable, but you never know. I appreciate it. I do not think they will cause any more problems, though. Robert is good people. Good to hear. Take care, Ryan. After we hung up, I went back to building my garden beds. The sun was warm, and there was a light breeze carrying the scent of wildflowers from my meadow. This was exactly the life I had wanted when I bought this property. Peace, quiet, and the freedom to do what I wanted with my own land. That evening, I grilled a steak and sat on my back porch eating dinner and watching fireflies start to appear as darkness fell. My nearest neighbor, an elderly man named Frank Martinez, was out walking his dog and stopped to chat over the fence. "Garden bed's looking good," he said. "Thanks. I am going to try my hand at vegetables this year. If you need any advice, let me know. I have been gardening for 40 years, got more tomatoes than I know what to do with every summer. I will take you up on that." Frank hesitated, then said, "I wanted to tell you that I thought what you did was right. With the pavilion situation, I mean. A lot of us felt that way but did not want to get involved in the drama. I appreciate that. Patricia thought she ran this place like her personal fiefdom. Someone needed to stand up to her. I am just glad it worked out in your favor." After Frank left, I sat there thinking about his words. It was nice to know that not everyone in the neighborhood thought I was the villain. But even if they had, I would have done the same thing. You cannot let people walk all over you, especially when it comes to your property rights. The weeks turned into months, and life continued peacefully. I had no more interactions with the HOA beyond paying my regular dues. My garden flourished, producing more vegetables than I could eat. I gave bags of tomatoes and peppers to Frank and Robert and other neighbors. One day, I got a message through Facebook from someone named Jennifer Morrison. She said she was writing an article for a regional magazine about HOA disputes and had heard about my case. She wanted to interview me. I was hesitant at first, but James encouraged me to do it. "Your story could help other people in similar situations," he said. "A lot of homeowners do not know their rights when it comes to HOA overreach, so I agreed to the interview." Jennifer came to my house with a photographer, and we talked for about an hour about everything that had happened. She was professional and fair, making sure to get all the facts right. The article came out 2 months later in a magazine called Carolina Living. It was titled "Standing Your Ground: One Homeowner's Fight Against HOA Overreach." The article presented the facts objectively, included comments from Robert about how the HOA had changed its procedures, and even had a sidebar about property rights and what homeowners should know. The response was overwhelming. I got messages from dozens of people sharing their own HOA horror stories. Some asked for advice, others just wanted to vent. A few people asked if they could hire James to help with their own disputes. One message stood out. It was from a woman named Linda Patterson who lived in a neighborhood in Durham. She said her HOA had built a fence that encroached on her property by about 3 feet, and they refused to move it. She had been fighting with them for 6 months and was about to give up. I called her and told her about my experience. "Do not give up," I said. "Get a survey, document everything, and find a good property lawyer. If you are in the right, you can win." Linda ended up hiring James, and last I heard, she won her case too. The HOA had to move the fence and pay her damages. It felt good to know that my fight had helped other people. That was worth more than the money I had won. 3 years after the Pavilion incident, I was completely settled into my life in Meadowbrook Hills. The neighborhood had changed for the better. The new HOA board was reasonable and transparent. They held regular meetings where homeowners could voice concerns, and they made decisions based on actual community needs rather than Patricia's whims. My cleared land had become a neighborhood attraction. Kids loved playing in the wildflower meadow, and I did not mind as long as they asked first. I set up a small lending library box near the street where people could take and leave books. It became a little gathering spot where neighbors would stop and chat. One afternoon, I was working in my garden when Robert came by with a man I did not recognize. "Ryan, this is David Quinn. He and his family just bought Patricia's old house." I shook David's hand. "Welcome to the neighborhood." "Thanks." "Robert was just telling me about the history of your property. That is quite a story. It is definitely memorable. I wanted to ask your advice, actually. I am thinking about adding a deck to the back of my house, and I want to make sure I do it right with the HOA. What should I watch out for?" I smiled. "Get everything in writing. Make sure your contractor pulls all the proper permits, and measure twice to make absolutely sure you are building on your own property." David laughed. "Noted. Robert said you are the guy to ask about dealing with the HOA the right way." "The right way is to follow the rules and make sure the HOA follows them too. Robert runs a good board now. Just stay involved and speak up if something does not seem right." After they left, I thought about how far things had come. From being the guy fighting against the HOA to being the guy new neighbors asked for advice. Life had a funny way of working out. That evening, I got a text from James. "Thought you would want to know. Patricia's bankruptcy was finalized. She listed the contempt fine, court costs, and about $40,000 in credit card debt. Fresh start for her, I guess." I texted back. "Good for her. Everyone deserves a second chance." And I meant it. Despite everything Patricia had put me through, I did not wish her continued misery. She had made mistakes, faced consequences, and now she could move on. That was how it should work. As the sun set over my wildflower meadow, I cracked open a beer and reflected on the whole crazy journey. It had started with anger and disbelief at finding construction on my land. It had escalated through legal battles and contempt hearings and logging operations. And it had ended with justice served, lessons learned, and a neighborhood that was better off for having gone through it. The Stumps were gone. The HOA had learned to verify property lines. Patricia was gone and starting over somewhere else. And I had my land, my garden, my meadow, and my peace. Sometimes you have to fight for what is yours. Sometimes you have to stand up to people who think they can push you around. And sometimes the best revenge is not revenge at all. It is simply refusing to be a victim and making something good out of a bad situation. I raised my beer to the sunset and smiled. Life was good in Meadowbrook Hills. Finally.